Chairman Bentz, Ranking Member Huffman, appreciate the chance to be a part of this hearing. I also appreciate the other members and guests, both questions and answers on something that's very, very important to me and to my constituents. You know, the Columbia River system, the operation of that system, including the lower Snake River dams, I can't think of anything more critical to Central Washington and the rest of the Pacific Northwest. If these dams were breached, and I mean either literally or functionally, those that are negatively be impacted would be electricity customers, transportation stakeholders, river-dependent ports, communities up and down the Pacific Northwest, farmers, recreationalists, practically everyone living in the region. Back in September, I participated in another hearing by the Natural Resources Committee, Mr. Chairman, on this very issue. And I asked Mr. Sims about questions about the CEQ, or the Council for Environmental Quality, their lack of transparency regarding the litigation and the inadequate solicitation of stakeholder input, something that Mr. Zinke was just asking some good questions about. So, Mr. Maunu, I wanted to ask you a similar question. So, going into the mediation, tell me some of the expectations that your organization had for this process and for CEQs, how they handled it. And then in addition to that, in your testimony, you stated that the interveners were effectively excluded. The defendant interveners were, and I think Ms. Falkenberg just said that too, from the litigation negotiations that were taking place in this process. So how early in the process did this mediation break down to the point where you and fellow stakeholders were excluded? So a couple questions there.
Sure, thanks for the questions, Congressman. I think as far as for expectations, first and foremost, you know, I think our organization, like was mentioned previously, we looked at this as an opportunity for a collaborative process, for a fair process, and a transparent process. I mean, that's not too much to expect. You know, if you're in a court-ordered mediation, a normal mediation is a negotiation. You know, it may be confidential, but there are give and take, there's sharing of information, there's collaboration toward an end goal. And very early on, though there were some working groups, I guess they called them at the time, there were some working groups that really quickly dissolved within the first few months into the private caucuses. And as was mentioned in some of our testimonies here, those private caucuses are 100% just between, you know, CEQ and FMCS and either the defendant intervener or plaintiff interveners, and anything that's shared in those is not shared nor discoverable nor anything else. We, as I mentioned throughout that process, kept submitting information. We've got a lot of records of the studies that we did and what we submitted, and we heard nothing back on our side.
Thank you. Mr. Sims, prior to the December 15th deadline, this draft settlement agreement was released, and shortly thereafter, a handful of Northwest Public Power Utilities published a press release where they threatened to pause discussions with BPA or Bonneville Power over the post-2028 contracts because of the contents of the draft of the settlement agreement. Specifically, you expressed concerns regarding the impact of the draft settlement would have on taxpayers. Could you tell us a little bit of detail about that and how ratepayers might be negatively impacted?
Sure, Congressman, and thank you for the question. I think what you see from the utilities is a response to this overwhelming uncertainty that was essentially foisted upon them from seeing this agreement in public, realizing the massive expanse of exposure from costs, from operational uncertainty, from other commitments that the U.S. government was making on behalf of the U.S. government writ large, but no express provisions of how different agencies might take on that burden. And I think you, Congressman, know well that in our region, often the BPA ratepayers and BPA become beholden to U.S. government commitments, and this was definitely one of those concerning elements. So the utilities very quickly formed a strategy to say to Bonneville, we need a 5-year contract option on the table so we can compare it to the 20-year contract option. And our chairman at BBC, Bear Prairie from Idaho Falls, said it very well. Why would I write a 20-year blank check when I could write a 5-year blank check? And the point is, the utilities are facing such extreme uncertainty that they want to make sure that they can keep Bonneville a little bit more on a short leash and see what's coming at them.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate you allowing me to go over time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys for your testimony today.